Arch Advocate Show, January 15th. Boy, I hope I stay on target today. Stay on target. Stay on target. January 15th, the reading of today's devotional. So I'm hoping that when you do listen to this show that it catches you early, right? It's a cool thing about devotionals. It's like a head check. You know, don't start your day without getting your mind right. And this reading is from a devotional book called Jesus Calling. It's written in the first person, as if it is Jesus speaking to you. And this is from a lady named Sarah Young, who was a missionary for a long time. Anyways, January 15th, if you want to read along, if you went down to your little Bible bookstore recently and picked a copy up for yourself. And I quote, "My face is shining upon you, beaming out peace that transcends understanding. You are surrounded by a sea of problems, but you are face to face with me. I am your peace. As long as you focus on me, you are safe. If you gaze too long into the myriad of problems around you, you will sink under the weight of your burdens. And then you will start to sink. Correct that. When you start to sink, simply call out, 'Help me, Jesus,' and I will lift you up." By the way, it's absolutely true. The closer you live to me, the safer you are. Circumstances around you are undulating. By the way, as a self-confessed and proud word snob, I actually don't know what undulating means. Todd! And there are treacherous-looking waves in the distance. So let me read that whole thing over again. The closer you live to me, the safer you are. Circumstances around you are undulating, and there are treacherous-looking waves off in the distance. And you can all see those waves, right? By the time those waves reach you, they will have shrunk to the proportions of my design. I am always beside you, helping you face today's waves. The future is phantom. It's seeking to spook you. Laugh at the future. Stay close to me. Wise words, right? We can all see things coming in the future. My wife, the problem with reading that is I actually read that to my wife first thing in the morning, and then we do it on the podcast. And so some of those words were kind of throwing her off. So I had to stop and explain like what some of those things mean. And it's like, well, the future is phantom. It's like we can see it. I can see that in the next couple of weeks I have to move into a new place. That is frightening. Nobody likes to move. It's hard. It's taxing. You know what I mean? It's going to put stress on my body. It's gonna rob me of time. It's going to put stress on my kids. Like I can see that, and I can see the problems that it's going to cause. I have to write a book. I have to write a couple of books. Like I can see that, and it's it's like a tidal wave. It's like, oh my God, how am I going to surf this? Like I can see what's coming in the future, and it's like it's frightening. But it's like, you know what? Here's God saying, like, look. Just focus on me today. You just focus on me today. And when the wave finally gets to you, you call out my name, and I'll meet you there. In the today place, in the right now place, right? When the problem is actually on your plate. I like that. Now, that does tie in, although I doubt that it will be obvious, but it does tie into what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. We're going to be talking about the Satanic Veggie Tales and Bandersnatch. And Wizardry, the wizardry that goes along with that. There's been Owen Benjamin and Vox have been talking pretty extensively over the last couple of weeks about wizardry. That's a word that sounds like, oh, wizardry. Like, you mean like Harry Potter? You mean like, what was the wizard? Merlin, the magician. It's a funny thing, if you actually do a study about like, Merlin the magician was actually a real guy. Right, but he didn't live in the king's palace, and he wasn't like some hoity-toity guy. He was a wild man like John the Baptist, very similar to John the Baptist, and he lived out in the woods, and he was like a crazy person. But like he like John the Baptist. If you read about John the Baptist, it's like just try to picture meeting him. It's like, well, here's this guy. He lives in the wilderness. He's got, he makes his clothes out of camel's hair that he probably found. And he probably didn't actually kill a camel. He probably, just, his camels shed and leave clumps of hair like cats do. He probably made it out of that. He probably looked really weird. Like, if you ever met John the Baptist, you'd be like, whoa, this guy's a kook. And that's like what Merlin was. And Merlin was actually, he was more like a monk, but he didn't live in a monastery. He lived by himself, and the king sought his counsel on many occasions, and then from there, the legend morphed and grew, just like Robin Hood. Like, Robin of Locksley was like a real guy who got fed up with, the government at the time, and whatever. And then the story morphed into this guy who could hit, anything with an arrow and like all this other stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that's the nature of how those stories goes, but it has a root somewhere. Merlin was a real guy. He wasn't a wizard. He wasn't a magician, but, as the original legend goes, he was a miracle worker. Anyways, I don't want to throw people off, because that word, wizard or wizardry, it can throw you off. But if that's you, bear with me. All right, because this is something this is something that I can explain, because I do have a little bit of a history in the art of wizardry. And I'll qualify that statement in this podcast. Stick around, all right? Manipulation, right? Manipulation. That's a word that has a bad connotation. If you're being manipulated, that's a bad thing. Anytime you use that word, anytime you have used that word, or anytime you will use that word in your life, it's 100%. It's going to be a negative thing. You're going to be like, oh, that guy's manipulating you. Or I feel like I'm being manipulated by you. And it's, you know what I mean? Like, it's never good. But the word itself, you can't look up the meaning of it in the dictionary, because the meaning has changed. You have to look up manipulate etymology. Like, you have to look into the history of that word and where it comes from to understand its true meaning. Manipulate. Right? Like, if you're here would be a good type of manipulation. You come home and your wife, right? She's got her hair did. She's got that dress on. You know that dress. She's got her stockings on, heels on. She's got that little pss, 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 perfume behind her ear, right? You know what time it is. She knows what she's doing. She is manipulating, right? But it's a good thing. It's going to work out good for everybody, particularly you. You say, well, Pete, how can you call that manipulation? Well, just hold on. Let's look into the etymology of that word. Manipulate. 1820, the year 1827, to handle skillfully by hand, a back formation from manipulation, as to manage by mental influence, especially for one's own purposes, is by 1864 financial sense from 1870. By 1949, it served as a euphemism for masturbation. Because manipulate it comes from two, manipule. It's two words. And mani means hands, right? So remember your wife that was there with her hair did, her dress on, stockings and heels on, right? She went to get a manicure. What does manicure mean? Mani means hand. Cure meaning to fix or to restore. Mani. That's what that word means. That's I believe it's Latin, and it's hands. Mani and pule means to measure out or to shape, right? It had a couple of different in the history of that word. It had a couple of different connotations. Like when you pull ore out of the ground, right? You have to do it with your hands. It's work that you do with your hands, and you're separating out the dirt from the from the gold or the iron or whatever it is that you're going after, right? You're shaping with your hands. And then it turned into more of a how pharmacists, and this is truly like the history of that word. When you said manipulate, you would go to your pharmacist and say, hey, I need you to manipulate, some medicine for me. And they would measure out with their hands, like if they had some aspirin or whatever, they would measure it out and say, okay, only take this much. And I'll give you 10 doses of, this much, and only take 1 dose at a time. But the measurement process itself was manipulation. It was that the pharmacist would use their hand to form the right size dosage. So the word manipulate, it means to shape with your hands into what you want it to do or to be. All right. So the original usage of that word was not nefarious at all. It is now, because anytime you use the word manipulate now, it's a bad thing. But anytime that you're using influence with your faculties, I guess would be the word, you're manipulating. Some of it can be evil and some of it can be good. If if you come home and your wife has or if you're there's a few lady listeners, it's like, if you come home and your husband's wearing a suit, right, and he had the good Christian decency to wash his behind and comb his hair, whatever, and then he put on a suit and he smells good, he looks good. He says, hey baby, we're going out for dinner. That's manipulation, and it's not bad, right? Because he's he's looking to make you happy. He's looking to, give you relief from the kids or whatever. It's like, he's using what he has to shape your life. And the same thing for men. It's like you come home and if your wife's all did up and everything, well, she's using what she has to shape your life. That's Manny, hands basically. Fuel to shape, to measure out. But the fact that word truly has morphed into, everything, anytime you use it, it's going to be in a bad connotation. That's the thing, is that you have to keep yourself from being manipulated to the bad. You have to understand what manipulation is. Right? That way you can see it. It's like, oh, I'm being manipulated. Do I want this or do I not? My wife's wearing a pretty dress. I accept this manipulation. I'm going to go with it. Some guy keeps asking me leading questions and keeps trying to control the conversation by asking leading questions that can only be answered a certain way. Well, that's a manipulation that I do not accept, and I can see it because I'm familiar with this type of manipulation, and I reject it. Now, there is some manipulation going on, some wizardry going on all around us all the time, and I'm going to point a little bit of it out. But first, I'm going to qualify why it is that I am qualified to speak on this. So I told you guys before, unless you're new, I was a trader of futures and options in the commodities markets on behalf of clients. Now, I had to, every broker, right, every stockbroker, every commodities broker, every broker, the pharmacy brokers, right, the pharmacy reps that go out, well, they're brokers of different kinds of drugs, and those people are paid 100% commission. And by the way, when it comes to pharmacy reps, it's no coincidence that pharmacy reps are 99.9% super hot and healthy women. Young, super healthy, super hot. Not a lot of pharmacy reps over the age of 35. There's a reason that happens, and it's dark. Anyways, you got to build your client base, and you're on 100% commission, so you're not making any money. You have to go out and get your book of clients. Now, in my world, right, commodity trading and even in the stock world, the way that you do that is the company that you work for buys leads from a company called Dun & Bradstreet, right? If you ever saw the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, that starred literally everybody. I mean, good Lord, everybody was. Jack Lemmon was in that movie, right? Michael Corleone was in that movie. That's Al Pacino. Sorry, I always have a hard time remembering that guy's name. Al Pacino. What's his name? The guy that hates President Trump. Kevin Spacey. I mean, who wasn't in that movie? Anyways, remember they had the Glengarry Glen Ross leads. Right, those were the leads that, man, if you didn't close the deal, then you were just an idiot. Well, Dun & Bradstreet leads, right? Dun & Bradstreet is an information company, and so what you do is you call up Dun & Bradstreet and you say, hey, I need 10,000 new leads, and they're expensive. They're like $1 a piece, right? What you do is you call them up. You say, I need 10,000 new leads, and I want. And you can be very specific. You can have whatever information you want, but you have to be specific. And it goes like this: like in our place, we were only licensed in 3 states to do business: Ohio, Georgia, California. Right. So we call it Dun & Bradstreet and say, I need leads. I need 10,000 leads for these 3 states, and I want men. I want men between the ages of 28 and 60. I want men between the ages of 28 and 60 who own a business. I want those 3 things, and I want those businesses to be confined to men who own businesses that have to do with heating and heating and air conditioning, electrical, plumbing, auto shops, these sorts of very specific things. And I want the approximate revenue of these men to be over $250,000 a year. It doesn't mean that they make $250,000 a year. It means that they move $250,000 a year. Because if they're doing that much commerce, then chances are they have disposable income, right? So you tell that to Dun & Bradstreet, and they send you boxes and boxes of your 10,000 leads, and these leads are almost 100% accurate. Like Dun & Bradstreet knows everything about everyone, or at least they used to back in those days. You can just call them up and say, listen, I need the name of a man who owns a heating and air conditioning company, makes $250,000 a year, and is not younger than 28. And then they'll mail it to you. Right? But you have to buy in bulk. Anyways. So then what they do is they give this big old stack of leads to me, and they say, listen, you need to dial that phone 300 times every day. And when that phone picks up, it's going to be a secretary. And here's what you have to say to get past that secretary to the business owner. And by the way, that lady has been hired specifically for you, to keep you away from him. That's why she's there. She's making $30,000 a year because of you. And believe me, that's a lot of money. So you better be good. You better be convincing when you get her on the phone. Because you have to get her to transfer that call to him. How do we do that? Manipulation. I have to make her believe that not only should she pass this call along, but that in fact, Joe, the business owner, is waiting for my phone call. And you have to do it without actually lying. Right? So what do? Well, you say some fancy words, and you phrase things in a certain way to make her believe that. That's wizardry. And that's what I did every single day. Then I get this guy on the phone. I've never spoken to him before. He's already paid $30,000 a year to not talk to me, and here he is talking to me. And I have maybe 5 seconds to make such an impression upon this man that he stays on the phone with me for another 10 seconds. Then I have 10 seconds to impress upon this man to stay on the phone with me for another minute. Then, you know what I mean, and on and on and on and on. And by the end of that phone call, I need that guy to send me $10,000. Or $20,000, or $15,000, or $7,500, nothing less than $5,000. And by the way, if you know the firm minimum, you know, for the brokerage firm is $5,000. But if you're a broker and you bring in a client for $5,000, you're gonna get ridiculed from your peers. It's like minimum, oh, nice job there. You're just gonna, you know, why didn't you just stay home and make that phone call from bed, lazy ass? $5,000. And I'm talking about first phone call. First phone call. How do you do that? How do you get somebody on the phone who does not want to speak to you, has paid a great deal of money to not speak to you, and turn that situation into a guy that sends you $20,000 that day on a trade on the Japanese yen, on a trade on soybeans or bacon, otherwise known as pork bellies, which can be used in a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. Name that movie. Come on, guys. Come on. Anyways, now how do you do that? Well, the answer is wizardry. But there's laws in place, so you cannot lie. You cannot misrepresent the truth. You cannot tell a tall tale. You cannot insinuate. You cannot, you know, there's all these things you can't do. And through all of that, you have to learn how to shape that person's point of view with your hands, if you will, right? With your tools. That's manipulation. And it's a large part of why I got out of that business. Because of September 11th and everything that happened there, like, I realized what kind of man I was turning into. And I said, no more of this. I'm never going to use my ability of persuasion against people. Because everybody, you know what I mean? Like, we're just sitting around waiting for disaster to happen so we can get rich off of it. That's, you know, whoever you are, atheist or no, it's like, that's, you live your life like that, it's going to put you in a weird place with your God. Even if you don't have one. So I got out of it. But I said all of that to say this. I am qualified to speak on this topic of wizardry and manipulation. And I forget sometimes that, like, I have this point of view because of my experiences, because of my career path, and because of my religious upbringing, and you know, the lens that I see the world through. And I forget, like, I'm the only one that has this perspective because it's mine. Everybody's got their own perspective. Everybody's been given different data through their whole lives in which they see the world through. And I forget that. I just assume everybody sees it the way I see it. And then I look at people like they're crazy when they look at me like I'm crazy. It's like, what do you mean? How do you not see this? You know what I mean? Like, this is clear as the nose on my face. You know what I mean? Which, by the way, I can see. Manipulation. Here's this is one thing, and I've heard a little bit of buzz about this, and I want to talk about this because I want you to see it, so that you don't get sucked in, right? So that you can see the wave coming afar off. Again, you don't have to stress out about it. The wave is there and it's coming. There is I don't see any other way that the wave that's coming is going to result in anything other than a war on U.S. soil. Most likely in the form of civil war, but war on our soil, bloodshed happening on our soil. I don't see any other way that situation is going to be resolved. I'm not saying that it won't. I'm sure that, you know, God is infinite and has infinite possibilities, and who knows how it's going to end up. But the way things stand right now, with the forces of darkness working as hard as they can, and as lost in the black woods as everybody seems to be, it's like, I don't see any other way. I don't see any other way, right? Again, not to say that it's, you know, I'm no prophet. Like, I've tried to predict the future many, many, many times and been wrong almost as many times as I've made predictions, right? So take that for what it's worth. But the wave itself is there, and we can see it, and we can see it coming. Don't stress out about it. Right? Get close to God. Get close. Right? Come into union with the Almighty, and He will meet you on that day, in that circumstance, and you'll be fine. You'll be protected by the same being that keeps the sun shining in the sky. Keeps all those stars out there, keeps all those stars shining at the same time. He's more than enough powerful to handle these circumstances. Don't say these things to stress you out. I just want you to, it's like, hey, look, here in a few days, like when you're surfing, this is kind of inside baseball, but like when you're a surfer, what you do is you paddle out on your board, and then you sit on it, and you wait for your set, right? Because waves come in sets. It's not just wave after wave after wave. They come in sets. They go wave, 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 3 waves, 5 waves, 20 waves, whatever. And then they stop. And then there's no waves for anybody. And then another set starts, right? And you have to wait for your set. All right, well, there's a set coming. And we don't know when it's going to get here. And we can see it off on the horizon. It's like, oh, it's going to be here in probably 10 minutes. We don't know when it's coming, but we know that it is coming. All right, so here's one of the waves, if I may, and if you will. All right. Netflix put out a show called Bandersnatch. Now, when I was a kid, for a short time, I had a couple of different. I like to build model airplanes. I loved the Corsair, because there was a show on TV called Black Sheep Squadron about a bunch of Marines that were Marine officers that were pilots. They were in the South Pacific, and the Corsair is a beautiful. I mean, it's a striking work of engineering. It's just a gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's sexy. The Corsair, the World War II Corsair is a sexy looking machine, and I like to build them. And I also like to read. And for a very short time, I got into reading, what are they called? Choose Your Path, choose the outcome books, right? Like you read the chapter, and at the end of the chapter, it'll tell you like, well, if you want to do this, then go to this page, and if you want to do that, go to that page, and on, right? It's kind of fun, but it gets old pretty quick, because you start realizing like, this just keeps leading me back to the same thing, and it doesn't really make any sense and whatever. But Netflix decided to do a show called Bandersnatch that is exactly that. That is user interactive, that calls on you from the very beginning to make decisions for the character. The first decision that you have to make is, do you want Frosted Flakes, or do you want Corn Puffs? And then the second decision you have to make is, do you want to listen to the Thompson Twins, or do you want to listen to this other group that I can't forget? And whatever you press, it's going to do that. Right? But then it goes on and on. And when you get right to about the middle, there's a decision that you have to make where you either have to commit suicide, or you have to cause another character to kill himself. Right? There's a decision that you have to make to where you either have to kill your own father, or go, check yourself into the hospital. There's a decision where you have to take the drugs that you were given by the pharmacist and either throw them in the garbage where they will still be accessible, or flush them down the toilet where they will not be accessible. And if you choose that one, it sends you back. You have to make other decisions the next time around where you do choose to keep the drugs around. And how is that wizardry? Well, If you want to know how to convince somebody to send you $20,000 on a first-time phone call to a man who has just spent $30,000 to not speak to you ever, you want to know how to do it? I'll tell you, it's real easy. Real easy. You just have to get that person to believe it was their idea the whole time. That's it. That's the beauty of storytelling. Right? That's why we tell stories. That's why storytelling is the most effective education tool that has ever been. Is because when you tell a story, the listener, right? If you tell me a story, my mind is going to achieve a somewhat shallow level of trance. I'm going to be in a trance. Right? I'm going to be looking at you, and you're going to be telling me this story. And in my mind, as I'm looking at you and listening to you, in my mind, there's a movie production going on of what you're saying. I'm going to create the characters. I'm going to set the backdrop and lighting. I'm going to watch a movie on the inside of my mind based on what you're saying. And I'm going to make myself the main character. Right? When you tell stories, that's what happens. Like when you read a book, that's the beauty of reading a book, is that you imagine it. That's why we get so crazy about reading books. It's like, oh, because it's a wonderful experience. Your mind stretches out and you start seeing all these different people that you've never met and having experiences that you yourself never really experienced. That's why storytelling is so important. And the way you get a man to wire you from his bank 20 grand that day is you tell stories that makes him the main character, where in that story that you told, he sends you $20,000. And then from his perspective, it was his idea all along because it originated in his imagination. Right? You say, well, that's some pretty demonic manipulation there. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because it was used for evil. Because I used that power to cause people to become my client and come and trade with me, to send me that money, right? I did it because I wanted to make money. However, the concept itself is not evil. Jesus spoke in parables almost exclusively. And what is a parable? It's a short story. See yourself as a man who goes out into a field and finds himself a treasure. And, what's the word he used? I can't remember. And he gets up quickly and he takes that treasure and he goes home and he gathers up all his stuff. He takes it out and he sells it. He just sells all of his stuff and gets the money. And he goes and he buys that land. Why? Because obviously there's still more treasures to be dug up, and he just wants to spend the rest of his life digging up that treasures. Well, in that story, that's you. You see yourself. You see yourself digging in the ground, and gonk, you hit the shiny box of treasure, or the bag of jewels, or whatever it is that you imagined when that story was told. And then you see yourself running and selling all of your stuff and going down to the, wherever they keep the paperwork on that plot of land and buying that piece of paper and saying, that's my land now. And Jesus said, this is the same as the kingdom of heaven. This is what it means to walk in the way of the Lord. This is what the kingdom of heaven is like. It's like a man who saw the value in it and just decided, like, I'm gonna get rid of everything. I'm just gonna keep digging up these treasures. Well, that's not evil. That's not evil. But it's meant to get you into the story so that you can see yourself doing it. Right? You say, oh, are you saying Jesus was being manipulative? No. Right? Because now manipulation has a bad word. Or is a bad word. It has bad connotations to it. But it's not, Jesus was using a teaching tool. And it can be used for holiness, or it can be used for devastating wickedness. And so here we have Bandersnatch, where in that show you have to do it. You have to kill yourself or cause the other guy to kill himself. You have to kill your father. And if you don't, you're going to go to the doctor and then you're going to get sent on a loop. You will be sent right back until you kill your father. You make the choice to kill your father. You're making those choices. That's demonic. That's getting you to imagine yourself doing it. It's putting you in the driver's seat of those decisions. Do you see what I'm saying? Can you see? Right? Can you smell the sulfur from the pit of hell? Right? Whatever you think of hell, whatever. Like, but can you? You know what I mean? Don't see hell. Smell it. Can you smell the sulfur on that? Can you hear the screams of the lost in that? Can you feel the heat on your skin? You know what I mean? Don't just see it. And if you haven't watched that show already, I strongly recommend you stay away from it and your children. Because it's demonic. I went through it, right? I got to a couple of different ends on it. Because I know that I can, I saw it for what it was immediately. And I wanted to see, like, well, just how far does this go? What is it that this show is going to be impressing upon people of all ages? An interactive television show where you are making the decisions yourself to kill yourself, kill your father, kill this, cause this other guy to commit suicide. To go crazy and it's demonic. Now, that's wizardry. That's casting a spell, if you will. Again, you might have a hard time with that word. I don't care. What do you call it? Right? For hundreds, probably thousands of years, they called it wizardry. I don't know what they call it nowadays. What do you call it? Do you have that word in your mind? Okay, then that's it. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the same thing. It's wizardry. It's causing people to think about things and you're being controlled to think about those things for a purpose, for the benefit of the people who are getting you to try to think that way. For the benefit. That's what makes it evil. That's what makes persuasion either evil or righteous. Is, well, who's it benefiting? Right? And when Jesus does it, it's like, well, it's benefiting you and benefiting the Father. So, righteous. Netflix is doing it. It's like, that's propaganda. That's manipulating people to get that much closer to being able to murder, being able to kill themselves, or being able to convince somebody else to kill themselves, and to have, to get used to the idea that life has no value, and that pressing the button or pulling the trigger has no actual real consequences, because after all, you're just a character in a movie. And to what end? To serve who? Right? That's manipulation. Like I said before, I don't know if you guys heard, like I love science fiction. Love it. I love science fiction. They had that show, Sense8. In the first episode, it blew my mind. I was like, wow, this is the greatest story. This has got to be one of the best science fiction shows I ever saw. And by episode 3, it was just gay porn. And I was just like, gross, dude. Why did you do that? Like, why did you bring me into this story so that I can sit here and watch gay porn? I don't want. This is gross. And I'm not talking the other kind of gay porn. I'm talking about the dudes. It's freaking gross. It's like, oh, Netflix, like, dude, like, stop, all right, please. Netflix, NBC, ABC, it's like, dude, quit pushing the gay. I'm aware that there's gay people, okay? Stop putting those shows on. I don't want to watch. I don't relate to this. I don't want to watch this. To what agenda? And by the way, you ought to look up how many cabinet members of the Obama administration, or not cabinet members, just people that were high level, well, I guess cabinet members, right? How many high-level people in the Obama administration now are running Netflix? What do those two things have in common? What does the White House and, high politics have to do with Netflix? Well, on the surface, nothing. Dig a little deeper, everything. Everything. Why would Netflix, a huge company, a company that revolutionized the way that we receive entertainment, completely revolutionized it, why would they want politicians working for them? Why? Right? Like, don't get stressed out about it. Be like, oh, it's the boogeyman. I'm not going to watch Netflix anymore. It's like, just slow down. It's just a wave out there. Just look at it. Look at it. Don't be afraid. Right? It's not here yet. And when it gets here, the Lord will be with us, as He is in this moment right now with whatever problems we're dealing with at this moment. But just look at it and just ask yourself, why would Netflix want people from the Obama administration working and running that company? It goes a little bit deeper. Now this one's going to seem a little funny. You might hear this and be like, oh, Pete, come on, all this Jesus stuff, now you're really going crazy. Okay, all right, well then check out, right? Check out, don't listen. Block yourself from the podcast. Like, listen, like, if you can't see the relevance of this, it's like, then you're blind, all right? And you've got a whole different set of problems. But here comes, all right. I just had 2 children in as many years, right? Well, pretty much. I have a kid that's about to turn 2 months old. I have another kid that's 16 months old, right? So I've gotten into Veggie Tales on YouTube because it's free, and plus I don't have a DVD player, and it wouldn't matter anyways because I'm not in a place where I could buy Veggie Tales DVDs. But Veggie Tales is a Christian cartoon. It's a cartoon series that tells Bible stories with a Christian ethic, a Christian lesson, right? That's what it is. And they clean it up a little bit so that it's not violent, right? Like it's like the story of David Goliath. It's the story of Dave and the giant pickle, right? The story of Gideon was, when all the Midianites killed one another. It's, they changed it up a little bit so that it doesn't freak little kids out, which is fine. It's fine. It's like reading a kid's Bible, when they make those Bibles for little kids. Like they clean it up so it doesn't shock them. I was born in 1973, so there was no such grace and consideration for me. Like when I read the Bible, it was the King James Version, and I was 4 years old, and I had, I read the truth, and I will raise my sons the same way, by the way. But Veggie Tales is good. It's a good form of entertainment. And I remember just a few years ago, probably 5 years ago, I heard the main creator of Veggie Tales. His name's Phil Vischer or Mike Vischer, one of those. He was on the radio on a Christian radio station, and he was on there talking about how he had lost Veggie Tales. He still gets to have a creator credit, so he still makes all kinds of money from it, but he no longer owns Veggie Tales because the owners of Veggie Tales sued him. And the way that he explains it, he's like, well, I made a handshake deal, nothing was in contracts, and they took me to court, and they won, and I don't really understand. It's like, dude, that's a lie. You did not lose a multi-million-dollar a year endeavor over a handshake. That's not what happened. I don't know what did happen, but I know BS when I hear it, and that's BS. Anyways, the content itself is, in my opinion, good. Right? You can turn on some. You have, as a parent, you have the relief that, like, when you need to, multitask, and I need to do some chores, and my wife needs to do some chores, and I just need that kid to, like, not, get in any trouble. I can put on some cartoons that aren't gonna burn his mind, and I can put on some Veggie Tales. And he can watch something that's not going to be offensive, and at the end of the show it says, "Remember, kids, God made you special, and He loves you very much." That's at the end of every one of their shows, right? And it's good enough. But recently, Veggie Tales, whoever owned it, sold to Netflix, and there's none of the old episodes on there. Just the new episodes since Netflix took over. So keep in mind, if you're listening to this right now, you've heard of Veggie Tales, whether you watched it or not, whether you were aware that they sold to Netflix or not. If you've ever heard of Veggie Tales, then you know what it is, what it's about, that it is Christian, and that whole thing, right? So that's in your mind, and so you think to yourself, like, oh, I'm just going to watch Veggie Tales on Netflix because it's Christian. These people are followers of Jesus. This is safe. This is safe. But ever since Netflix took over, bought the brand. They bought Veggie Tales. Anybody uses the word Veggie Tales on their productions, they're going to get sued and lose by Netflix. Because they own it. Even if the original creators, Phil Vischer and Mike Nowacki, or vice versa, if those two guys went off and started another cartoon called Veggie Tales, Netflix would sue them and win and take all their money. They don't own it anymore. They sold the product of their soul to Netflix, the devil. And now, if you will, if you have a Netflix account, you can go on to Netflix and click on Veggie Tales and watch episode 1 of the first season that appears to you, and you will hear nothing about God loves you, God made you special, God loves you very much. You won't even be able to see a biblical tale. But there's a nation of Americans and English people, or, anybody who speaks English, or any Christian people in the Western world, or any Christian people anywhere who know, like, oh, this is Veggie Tales. It's on Netflix. Veggie Tales is Christian. Here, Johnny, pull up a chair, sit and watch this cartoon. As they receive lessons that have nothing to do with following Jesus Christ or having faith in the Almighty. So obviously King David was not a follower of Jesus Christ because he was 700 years prior to that. But the story is a man who trusted in the Lord. You're not gonna see stories of King David on Netflix as it applies to Veggie Tales. Why would Netflix want to do that? Why would they want to take this cartoon, this Christian cartoon, and take it and strip it of its core principle? Why would somebody do that, you ask? Manipulation. They put their hands on it and they shaped it to what they wanted it to be, and now they're using it for their own gain. They bought the brand because people like you and me are going to click on it. I did. I clicked on it. I was appalled. There's a lot of Christian people out there that they're not going to see it. They're not going to see, like, this has nothing to do with you. What are you talking about? This has nothing to do with Jesus. This has nothing to do with Yahweh. This has nothing to do with, this has nothing to do with any. It's just a cartoon that has some sort of moral to it. Like, be nice to your friends on the playground or whatever. It's like, I mean, that's all fine and good, but it's like, anybody can teach you that. And it's Wizardry. And on that same platform, your kids can click over and watch Bandersnatch, and they can watch Sense 8, and they can watch pornomentaries or docu-pornos or whatever. Like there's pornography now on Netflix under the guise of documentaries. Your kids can click on it. It's like, oh, well, it's Netflix. I mean, it must be clean or everything, I mean, for crying out loud, they've got Veggie Tales, and Veggie Tales is all about Jesus, so Netflix must be all right. It's like, no, you're being indoctrinated. there's a never-ending slew of videos, documentaries about Hitler. Not one about Pol Pot. Not one about Stalin. Right? Not one. Why is that? You know what I mean? Like, there's lots of bad guys in the world. Why is it there's 50 documentaries about this one dude and nothing on anybody else? You're being programmed. You're being manipulated. And it's being done in such a way that it takes place in your mind, in your imagination, so that it appears to you as original thought. And it's not. You're being programmed. Beware. Thanks for listening to the show. Let me know what you think, right? If you want to support the show, please support the show by going on to paypal.me/archadvocate and throw me some dough. Takes money to make money, champ. Moving on. Appreciate you guys. Bear with me, right? I'm just going through some changes over here. But again, hope you enjoy the show, and I will talk to you tomorrow.